with a vision not to be married to a seat, but to actually create change, you then take those stances and you say, no, I want to move away from punishment and in the direction of care, in the direction of restoration, right? And we have been doing that. And I have said that out loud in the campaign trail. I have said that out loud in community meetings where I have been summoned for taking positions to create programs that take money from the police directly to create programs that care for people. I have been accused of being defund the police. I have been accused of a lot of things. Actually, every time that I run for office, every time that there is an election cycle, the only thing that they come after me on is she wants criminals to run the 33rd Ward. She is a gang member. She's a Latin queen. I have memes of me dressed like a saint, like the patron saint of gangs with like a Latin queen crown. They have said everything that they could possibly say. They have sent mailers to the whole ward saying that I just want crime. And it doesn't matter because the reality is that I have won 2 terms by saying what I am saying and what I am going to continue to say. Because if we
murder registry, how does that affect your daily life?
Because I'm still in custody. I'm still ruled by the Department of Corrections and law enforcement. So it affects a lot of decisions, a lot of people I go around. You just have to be aware that at any minute they have that string they can pull. And they've came to the house and showed themselves to cause, to me it's intimidation. It's so the family I live with are not streetwise or know that, or they haven't been presented that to be late at night. Police, just shocks them. So, just to present themselves in that way. And there's so many things we could go into about this documentary, but the key thing, and one of the major things that helped my release was the Constitution that says to sentence the offender for an offense, but then it says clause B, to restore him to useful citizenship. They cannot stand to exercise clause B to let us be restored and be fully free. It's just not in the makeup of a law enforcement mindset, but it's the Constitution. It's the only thing that keeps us level or equal. But and we spoke about this before in different panels where I've said that they take an oath when they get in office as senators and everybody else to uphold the Constitution against foreign and domestic enemies. But they get above the law when people get hardened the same way we were in the streets. When you see all that death, you get hardened against it and you do wrongful things because you're trying to stop it. And the same thing, they see it, they can't stand it because you're seeing people wounded and hurt like that. So then they want to just lock you away forever. But the Constitution doesn't say to do that. So people get personalized. It's just human nature to hate it and not look at the Constitution to bring a person back after whatever. And that's what the taxpayers pay for. You pay billions of dollars for that to happen, for people that cause infringements in society, going to what's called Department of Corrections. You're thinking they're being corrected as said, and it's not monitored. And we should expect and want better products, which is people that went in there to come out of there better people for society and not recidivate. And I could talk all day, but I'll say one more thing, that when they say they exercise public safety and they stop recidivism, they operate, in my 47 years, at over 50%, 60% recidivism rate. But what they don't tell the public is when a person recidivates, they commit another crime. They caused another victim, whether they sold drugs, whatever kind of thing they did, they caused another crime. And the Department of Corrections has people in custody. They can't be delinquent, and to operate at that high of a recidivism rate, then they're participating in the next victim's being a victim.
And you call that putting out bad product?
That's
The
putting out-
IDOC and we as the taxpayers are putting out bad
We're
product.
putting out bad product. If a guy goes in there 5 times, or in my case, having me spend 47 years in prison, if it takes you 47 years to get me to change my mind, you need to be in another business. You need to find another business.
Senator Guzman, so we saw in the documentary how the Prisoner Review Board became a political football, and some of your Republican colleagues in the Senate, this was before you were there, of course, were calling out the governor and Democrats as appointing a board that was showing that they were soft on crime. How do you, and that's an easy button to push as an elected official, the fear of crime is an easy button to push. How do you speak to your constituents in a way that, that plays to their more compassionate instincts?
And I think something I'm really proud to bring in the journey of representing this district is that we have folks of all walk of life in our district, folks that, you know, have been directly impacted by the criminal justice system, folks that are getting to come back to our community, that are getting to fulfill the promise of everything that they wanted to do while they were in the prison system. Ronnie, I have to say thank you for, I think, your story and testimony. I don't cry a lot lately, but I was crying back there. It was probably the reference to the ketchup, I'm not gonna lie to you. But I think there was something, you know, the persistence that your family and community and you know, endured, and ultimately that you being here next to me had nothing to do with a very broken prison review board that ultimately, to your point, the Constitution was your saving, right? Still speaks to the dynamic that happens with the prison review board in the legislature today, where every year, probably one of the most popular items that gets debated and has the most numerous pieces of legislation is, and the debate is like, what are we gonna do about the review board? And you have folks that say we need to overcorrect, and we shouldn't be having anyone out, and we should be thinking about how we make this more stringent. And then you heard, you know, one of my colleagues in the Senate, Senator Murphy, who kind of said the opposite, right? You, Graciela, and folks like you are too emotional, are too liberal for daring to bring compassion and empathy and a holistic view of what it would mean to reimagine our criminal justice system to truly do what it needs to do for our people, right? So the fact that it is weaponized by folks that ultimately have no interest in correcting for centering human lives, but have every interest in monetizing the carceral system, is, I think, the underbelly that we didn't talk about in the documentary, but is at play as well. And if I could, I want to kick it over to a sister in the fight, because I think for me, our Alderwoman represents what can be the opposite in this district. That, you know, she has ran, she'll tell you more, but, you know, we get to be very brazen in our belief of what it could be, and our community is with us, and we win, and nobody is chasing us out of our district, because those are shared values. So
Yeah.
I'll kick it over to her.
Thank you, Graciela. Thank you so much for your testimony. Thank you for that beautiful piece of documentation. It's amazing to watch. I would say that it takes courage. You just have to stand on your values in order to speak to the world that you want to see. And one of the bigger problems in politics is that there are very few people that are grounded in values. People go with the wind. As you saw, whenever there is a campaign and people say, oh, this person is soft on crime, this person just wants criminals to run rampant, nobody wants violence. Nobody that is running for office is hoping that there is, you know, a war in your neighborhood. That is not true. But when people are faced, when candidates, when politicians are faced with the prospect of being blamed for a wave of crime, of course they are going to bend the knee and they're going to say, no, we need to do this. We need to stick with punishment. We need to do what we have been doing. For some of us that came into office with a different vision, with a vision not to be married to a seat, but to actually create change, you then take those stances and you say, no, I want to move away from punishment and in the direction of care, in the direction of restoration, right? And we have been doing that. And I have said that out loud in the campaign trail. I have said that out loud in community meetings where I have been summoned for taking positions to create programs that take money from the police directly to create programs that care for people. I have been accused of being defund the police. I have been accused of a lot of things. Actually, every time that I run for office, every time that there's an election cycle, the only thing that they come after me on is she wants criminals to run the 33rd Ward. She is a gang member. She's a Latin queen. I have memes of me dressed like a saint, like the patron saint of gangs with like a Latin queen crown. They have said everything that they could possibly say. They have sent mailers to the whole ward saying that I just want crime. And it doesn't matter because the reality is that I have won 2 terms by saying what I am saying and what I am going to continue to say. Because if we want a different society, we have to do something different from what we have been doing. Prisons are a business. And there is a dependence on keeping people caged, human beings caged, in order to make profit. That Republican, is she a senator? Yeah. That Republican senator said it. She said it incredibly well. This is our economy. Our economy is based on imprisoning people. You are literally using it as an industry to keep people employed. I don't think that that is the kind of society that we should live in. I don't think that we should depend on people being caged. We should be in the business of getting people out. We should be in the business of helping people develop the skills that they need to be able to be in society, to be able to be in community. And for that, you need community. And you need to build the structures that are going to provide that support, right? So that's what we are in the business of doing.
Stand up.
James, maybe you want to introduce yourself, but your job is basically, I'll call you a lobbyist if that's okay, and you need to talk to a really ideologically diverse group of people, everyone from Senator Guzman to Senator Bryant. When you are trying to bring people along to your cause of criminal legal reform who maybe are concerned for their being primaried, an attack ad against them, calling them soft on crime, what do you say to convince them to take what might be a difficult vote if they're, let's say, a centrist Democrat?
Thank you, Dan. I'm James Swanzy. I'm the Associate Policy Director at Restorative Justice. And that's a very good question because ultimately you have to talk to every legislator when you're dealing with this kind of legislation. But I think ultimately you just continue to bring people in front of them that goes against their narrative. People like Ronnie, people like myself. I too am a former juvenile lifer who served 28 years in the Department of Corrections. And once I came home, I got right to the work. It's naturally instilled in individuals who have been sentenced to long-term incarceration. We are naturally what the face of long-term incarceration looks like, and they cannot go against what it is that we bring from the system. We naturally changed as individuals. Like Ronnie said, the system doesn't do a very good job of changing people. So in order to combat that, we just have to continue to bring people in front of legislators to show them that that tough on crime narrative does not work. And there's no such thing as soft on crime. It's just more or less individuals have changed and wanted to do more with themselves, and that's literally what we have to do when we talk to these legislators. We do lobby days. I love to bring formerly incarcerated individuals in front of legislators that can attest to being incarcerated and then coming home and making something of themselves. I love to say that I'm a taxpaying citizen now. I love to say that when legislators are at work, by me being a registered lobbyist, I'm working also. So these are things that we just continually need to do, because for every one bad story, we have at least 10 good stories of success. But these are things that are rarely talked about in this business.
But what if they're concerned about losing their job? I mean, reading between the lines of what the Alderwoman is saying, it sounds like you're getting some pretty beyond angry, hateful calls. You get some hateful calls. How do you advise legislators?
Well, you have to talk to the constituents. Just as Senator Guzman said, not everybody in every district believes that people should be locked up forever. And you have to bring the same people that are electing these officials to the table to speak and show them that they want the same thing. You know, they want to see people have a second chance and see what people have become.
Senator Guzman, do you have anything to add about that, particularly as you talk to maybe Republican members of the Senate or try to bring along some of your centrist Democrat colleagues?
That's a real question, Dan. That's super real. So I think, I do want to speak about, I think the power of what you said about when folks with lived experience come to the people's house and get to lift up testimony. Because I think, one, it's not a space, there are lobbyists. I think to your point, there's lobbyists that represent industry and corporations. They're paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to do what they do. And then there's community lobbyists, like what you've heard about today, that are folks from our community that are coming with a really strong volition to say, we're here for human rights, we're here for civil rights, and we're gonna keep coming. And it's not just about the bill, it's also about the organizing and the narrative, right? And so I think to your point, all of those things have to come together to influence colleagues that don't wanna do something, because ultimately I wish I could tell you we get to 30 votes on doing the right thing. But sometimes you get to 30 votes by dragging people into humanity because the right media story hits at the right time, someone gets released and it changes the conversation, which is what it did, Ronnie, when you got released. It changed the conversation around what second chances could look like. Sometimes it's a kismet of all of those things coming together, and that's what happens when community lobbyists that come from that can come together. We get to push people, we get to bring them reason, we get to bring them stories. The other side of it, sometimes you have to bring them the politics and the reality of their district. Are you gonna walk away from folks that are now citizens, taxpayers, that are working in our communities, that are doing good work, and you're gonna tell them that they don't matter? Are you gonna tell them that to their face when they ask you, are you gonna support the bill? It takes a lot of bravery to do what they're doing, but those conversations matter, and that's why reform like what just got passed by Governor Pritzker into law on June 22nd, SB 19, which we'll talk about in a second, it passed with a really tight margin, but it passed. So it's just to say that all of these things can come together and we can win.
Yeah, I do want to come back to SB 19. Ronnie, I want to talk a little bit about your notions of power. You've spent most of your life in an institution that's designed to strip all power away from people, and yet you found a way on the inside to really exercise power and influence. Talk about that.
I want to stay in the boundaries of what I hear people believe, that I'm not in agreement with a lot of statements, and that I would like to see, like these groups, these reform groups and advocates, Restorative Justice, Illinois Prison Project, all these different groups have, and the senators included and the aldermen included, have workshops to understand one language, so we come in one accord to come at what's wrong, because they may be the authoritative people, but they're not the power, and I never believed it. And I wrestled with that my whole incarceration. So, and not to misjudge your word, but when somebody says, we're gonna give them a second chance, this is not by chance. This is the Constitution, this is by law.
Right.
So when somebody said, we're gonna give you a second chance, and they would say that to me in the institution, I said, so when I serve my sentence, you're gonna give me a second chance. Who are you? What did I do to you? What do I owe you? That you're gonna lord yourself over me. So I don't like hearing somebody say that, second chance. When I know I was there before the system started, that people don't know, that's why they need workshops, that in 1977, they started a concept called Class X. So you had legislators, people in Springfield, sat there and sat down and said, we're gonna create a whole class of people and call them X. And X is a neutral factor in the mathematical algebra to find it out. So for 40 years, they got a whole system of brothers going through there that don't mean nothing, they're just X'd out. So that left them not have to restore them, not have them, give them the munitions. So I would like to arm with words, like I just told Bill Ryan, the senators, all the people that are going in the arena to fight for us, they need to go fully armed. And the other statement that's appalling or sickening is the arm twister when they say, you're soft on crime. And the people that they say it to, I see it because I was in Springfield. I was there, seen him there plenty of times, and I would listen to him, and they would say, oh, they're soft on crime. And people didn't know how to respond to it, that it's biblically, and not only biblically, but the Constitution again, you're supposed to restore me. So I'm following the Constitution, but you want to arm twist me not to do what the Constitution says to do. So you need to stop saying that and confront that right there. And people don't know that as far as that Prison Review Board goes, in 1984, they put out a bulletin, and this is the audacity that they had to say all ex-officers and all ex-state attorneys come and get on this board so we can stop its function and stop people from going home. So you have people joining the government to stop its function, and it's okay. And this is where these workshops need to be set up, because these papers still exist, where all these articles, so you can go to them and say, this has to stop and be a better people for our people. You're supposed to be with those people in prison, like she just said, that senator said, that's our economy. So I'm just being pimped. I was $1 for somebody else. You're not concerned with developing me to be something else. And on the flip side of that, oh, you're in a street gang. So me, Brian, all these people, Wendell and him and Swanzy inside the prison. You know how many people that he probably raised, and how many people that he raised, how many people that he indirectly or directly converted people's mindset to, hey, be a better person, brother. He did rehabilitation by the arts. So as we would do that to help people change and be better people, they want to lock us up and put us in seg. And you a gang member, you can't do that. So you want to keep us in this same predicament, and that has to be, those things have to be broken, with you're spending your dollar and back to the bad product. So, and I don't know if that answers your question, because I had to get that out. When I hear that second chance, it's a trigger to me that just,
Thank you for saying that.
Well, maybe you can talk about, now that you're out, what you're doing to try to affect change.
Well, I go to many different reentry centers. I work with Illinois Prison Project. I work with a lot of churches in the community, Humboldt Park community, reentry centers. We have many peace circles. We were trained in the institution of trauma circles, cognitive behavior therapy. We're doctors. That's what we are. We got 37 years. We got years and years of working with individuals, and it's not in a bragatory way, but these guys changed their life. And when you see that video and you seen so many people go to the courtroom, 100 people, they went and we were enemies as kids. So we learned from our value is our experiences. Max, the one who was on the Prison Review Board as a kid, nobody knows. And during this interview, I didn't want to put him out there, but I think Dan was trying to get me to say, when we first did the video, did an incident happen with you and Max about a hat? And I didn't talk to Max, so I'm like, no, I don't remember. I didn't want to do that, but as a kid, he shot my hat off my head. And then friends of mine killed his brother, and then he killed friends of ours. So this is what street gang life is. And we up in prison. That's why he said, when I came on him, he's like, man, what's this guy gonna do? And instead I said, we gotta stop this. And we worked towards sitting down with the most anti-people, black and brown, who hated each other. And we ended up, you'd find us just like this. What are we gonna do to do this? And hey, stop that. Hey, stop that. And if it can be done there, it could be done right in these communities. And I've seen it. So when they say that we're animals and they hold us in that light, or you're just that, it's not. So what I do this day is go around and, as they say, in families, I got family members. Oh, I don't talk to my sister for this long. I don't talk to my brother. I mess with him. I say, how long are you gonna keep them in seg? How long are you gonna keep them hold down? So it's just preaching love to these people, because you've seen in my case, in that document, Dan came along, and I didn't have no money. I didn't have no money to fight attorneys. What moved that mountain was love. Them people came with love, just came. So we did dinners, we put people together, and there's groups credited with hundreds of people going home with natural life, never ever supposed to go home. And when you walk in the prison system, you can ask him how it feels. That they tell you you're gonna die here, you see everything in a whole different light than everybody else sees it. Your whole world changes, especially if you walk like that for 30, 40, like that. So That's why when
Can I
I
say
walked.
something about that
please
really
do.
quick?
Here you go.
I think one important point is that right now, violence in Chicago is down over 30%. And a huge part of that is formerly incarcerated people that are helping reduce violence. And that is what's possible when you decide that you want to invest in rehabilitation, in restoration, in care, and in community. And I think that's a very important thing that we need to be reminding ourselves. There is a lot of power and potential in actually investing in restoration and care.
That's a good transition to the forces that are pushing back against that. We saw the influence that the police union and police
Right.
have over the prisoner review board. What, as you try to bring about police accountability and policing reform in Chicago, to what extent does the police union or the CPD complicate that?
Oh my God. We have so many layers of accountability at this point, and we still can't move. We have a police board, we have COPA, we have the CCPSA, and there is a Bureau of Internal Affairs within the police that is supposed to investigate too, and we are still stuck. I think that it takes more people like us coming into city council to make sure that we continue to move towards the vision that we have. At this point, several times the FOP has come to city council. They have negotiated contracts. We have voted against those contracts because there is not enough accountability, but there's not enough people that do that, right? If you have enough people that are willing to vote against a contract until they put certain protections in place, until we know that they are going to be accountable, it changes the conversation. But right now we don't have enough people to be able to stop them inside of city council. I was watching the documentary and it was blowing my mind, because I have seen Catanzara speak so many times in city council.
He's good.
He comes after us all the time, after the progressives, and he loves to tweet about us. But I was thinking about how different it is when an officer shoots somebody. And this happens all the time. All of a sudden it was an accident. And he doesn't deserve to be in prison. He doesn't deserve to be convicted because they are under a lot of pressure. You don't understand. They felt threatened, and that's why they pulled the trigger. And they took a child's life, but that is not enough to hold an officer accountable, right? But it is incredible to see him speaking to this person should die in prison because they made a mistake. Right? So the only people that get to make mistakes are the police officers. And that is a narrative that we hear over and over and over. So I think that there is a lot of work to do talking to community. I wanted to speak on treatment not trauma, which is a program, a model that we developed in order to remove police officers from responding to mental health crisis. And it was very challenging at the beginning because police first didn't want to let go of that, even though they don't want to be responding to those and they're not effective. But it was not hard to convince people that we should be caring for people who are experiencing crisis instead of punishing them or putting them at risk of being shot by a police officer, right? We put this item on a ballot across 3 wards, asking people if they wanted us to remove police from mental health crisis, create a mental health crisis response, and we got 97% of the vote across 3 wards. People did not want the police to come and respond to this. So it took a lot of knocking on doors, talking to people about how they felt about. Everybody had a family member that was struggling with mental health. Everybody had a family member that was in prison because they were suffering a mental health situation. And people were very empathetic. to it across 3 wards in different places, north side, west side, and south side. Everybody was in agreement we need to remove the police. So I do think that it is possible to convince people to these frameworks and these policies and ideas, but it takes organizing, it takes having the conversations with people at the doors, it takes going to places like this in community and discussing, because I truly believe that people can be won to the idea that punishment is not going to keep us safe, that it is restoring and community what keeps us safe.
And there's a lot of convincing yet to be done. There are 47 other wards that you didn't have vote on this yet, and policing is so deeply entrenched in our culture that requires a pretty massive cultural change, which requires messengers who know how to talk to people who maybe don't agree with them.
Yeah.
But anyway, Senator Guzman, you mentioned Senate Bill 19 was huge. It's extremely long, but having covered this set of issues over the last couple of years, I can't tell you what a sea change this is going to bring about. Talk a little bit about Senate Bill 19.
We'll get it started, and then I want to kick it over to you, James, if I could. But, I think just the part that I always remind people about legislation, and there's 3 bodies that have to be convinced at the same time, right? So you have our House, we have the Senate that I'm a part of, and then the governor. So I mentioned earlier in my response, right, so the last piece of this, the House voted, the Senate voted, we kicked it over to the governor, and then it was signed into law on June 22nd. And I think it's ultimately testament, right, to the growing conversation that, was in the documentary and everything in the space. But, I think for everything that Senate Bill 19 helped win, which was ultimately, one, ensuring that there is, lo and behold, that you actually have to be licensed and like a credible witness, basically, in the sense of like you have to either belong to the legal community, you have to have a criminal justice reform background. It opens up like a broader set of roles that can participate in the prison reform board, for example. And that matters when you think about the experiences that get to look at people's lives and say, what happens, right? So we know the diversity of voices matters. That's a provision. But for everything that was won within it, there were other provisions that I'm sure advocates wanted more. And so it's a negotiation, not just between the folks that wanted to see everything in Senate Bill 19, but also folks like the FOP, also folks like the Republicans that we talked about. So it's just to say that, that this is a piece, and like what is the broader piece of what I mentioned earlier in my response. PRB is going to continue to come up. It comes up every cycle. 2/3 of my colleagues are up eminently, myself included. So undoubtedly, much of what we're talking about will come again. And it becomes a matter of like, do we build on some of the good that is Senate Bill 19 as opposed to stripping back from it? And I'll kick it over to you for your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Senate Bill 19 was definitely a big piece of legislation. It literally brought more accountability. It enhanced more or less about what the victim's aspect, and it also changed the dynamic of who would be on the prisoner review board. They want to try to lean more towards law enforcement heavy, and they want to take away the individuals that believe in more juvenile justice aspect of things. So it's going to be kind of like interesting to see how this legislation unfolds because of the PRB being a political football, as Dan said earlier. But it was basically a piece of legislation that brought more transparency to how the process is in victim notification, just because of specific incidents that happen in dealing with the PRB. So.
And it also changes the criteria that the board looks at when they're examining a case like Ronnie's. So they're not necessarily going to be focused anymore on that it would deprecate the seriousness of the offense to release him. Instead, they need to be looking at rehabilitative factors.
Exactly. I think, me personally, that is what they're supposed to be doing anyway. It's not supposed to be a retrial of the case. It's supposed to be what the person has become and who the person is now, and that really what people need to be knowing. That's really what people need to know about the individuals that come before the PRB.
And now that's the law, and it's up to the current board members to uphold that law.
Yes, they are fully aware of that, and we definitely know that they are fully aware of Senate Bill 19, and they are actually upholding that right now. So
James, very few people in Illinois, very few incarcerated people are even eligible for parole. Ronnie was because he'd been sentenced before 1978 when Illinois basically abolished parole. There's also a youthful parole provision which only applies to a very, very narrow sliver of Illinois incarcerated people.
yes, Dan, in 2019, Restore Justice passed legislation that would give individuals 20 years and younger a chance to have their sentence reviewed after serving a certain amount of time, depending upon what they were charged with, after 10 or 20 years, and now 30 years after you've served that, you definitely will get a chance to go in front of the PRB. I take that back. That was one thing that we did change. We do not want individuals to go in front of the PRB. We chose to make it to where they go back in front of the judge, in front of the court system, just because of the simple fact that the PRB is a political tool in the way that it is. And in 2019, this was prospective only, which means that only moving forward, individuals sentenced after 2019. And a huge part of what it is that we do at Restore Justice is bringing about retroactivity, and we want to make that piece of legislation retroactive, so the individuals that were sentenced before 2019, who have become different people, who have changed, we want them to get the opportunity to show who they are now. So that is what that piece of legislation does, and retroactivity is a very important aspect in Springfield, and it's also one of those tough conversations. So that is something that we will continue to work on at Restore Justice.
So just to put a fine point on that, if you were 18 years old in 2018 and committed a crime, you are not eligible for parole ever. If you have a life sentence, you are in for life, without unless you are able to pass retroactivity.
That is correct.
All right, any wrapping up remarks? Anyone? Ronnie? Senator Guzman?
I want to make sure Ronnie gets the final word. I also want to make sure that James you get a chance to anchor us in some next steps and things we can do.
Call to action.
Yeah.
So at Restore Justice, we definitely do a lot. We like to keep people involved. It is a one-pager on the back table about how to get involved more with Restore Justice, but to hear a little bit more about it, we have an advocacy team, which we come together every Friday during the session to give people updates on what's going on in Springfield, whether it's our legislation or whether it's an important piece of legislation such as Senate Bill 19. We also have an action team as to where we volunteer and we get people to volunteer to go do door knocking, phone canvassing. We want to support those legislators that support what it is that we're doing, such as Senator Guzman. So those are just a few things. We also have a family loved ones group called CRIC, Communities and Relative of Illinois Incarcerated Citizens. So this is something that our outreach director, Julie Anderson, whose son is also formerly incarcerated, in his home now doing great things. So we just like to give people a lot of things that we can do and you can get more involved. You definitely can go to restorejustice.org and sign up to be on that advocacy team or action team. And we also do trainings, like Ronnie said, people just don't know. So we do trainings on how a bill becomes a law. We do trainings on how to build relationships with legislators. And we just try to give the best practices that we know to work when you want to do the work that we do and advocate for whoever it is that you're trying to advocate for. So that's the call to action. And we would love to see you guys at some of these things.
Got the man of the hour.
Man, well, he summed it up. He said a lot of action going on in there. So it's educating people to what's going on. The worst thing that happened in the state of Illinois was 1977, when the governors and the legislators decided that they didn't want to rehabilitate people no more. They were just going to punish them and take away that opportunity for individuals in the system to go in front of a board and show, hey, I changed, I done this. They erased that, and they just gave you time, an extension of time. So that's what people are fighting for now, to bring back where a person in there could have a chance to say, hey, I changed. So the thing is, to me, is getting like that senator lady, that they have those concepts because they have now a 40-year stretch of this empire that they built for finances, and you're trying to take down this empire. When I went in prison, was 7 prisons, 30 prisons. So it's like having 30 Burger Kings. Who's gonna give up one? Who's gonna give up two? And you see them fighting for Stateville. So it's just, I'm applaud these people and everybody involved, all these groups for educating these people and the continued solicitation. And I believe
Ronnie's seen it all from the inside walls. Gil got a vision that still stands tall. We don't beg for seats, we build